Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first. When I was
So I've been waiting about 20 years to get this off my chest. Um, I was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas, in the Army back in the early 2000s, 2002 to '05. We deployed in '03. My unit got back in 2004 ish. Um, and our company was assigned to a bunch of details, like other vets will tell you what's up with that. But there was like funeral detail, gate guard, like all this other stuff. And since I only had a couple months left on my contract, my platoon sergeant sent me over to the gym, Long Gym. It was a fairly modern building, not old. Some of the buildings on Fort Riley are pretty antiquated. It's an old post, right? And so yeah, no big deal. So I go over there, and one of the things that I noticed right away is when I was up on the second floor by myself, I always felt like I was being watched. It was this really weird, eerie feeling. Um, the gym is two floors. It has a big glass front, from what I remember. You go up the stairs immediately, you're on the second floor. It's got a bunch of gym equipment, like not free weights, but like the machines. And to your left was a balcony that looked out over a basketball court on the first floor. So just for layout. And you go right in, there's a hallway, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, yeah, I always got this creepy feeling about being up there by myself. So months go by, like it's now late fall. And if you know anything about Kansas or the Midwest at all, is that in places like that, the wind never stops blowing. And in this particular night, it was cold and it was rainy. And earlier in the day, we were told that the brigade was having a mandatory fun day. Uh, that sounds as lame as it's as lame as it sounds. Where you're voluntold to hang out with them and have big fun. So the whole brigade was supposed to like play soccer and volleyball outside. Well, because the weather was so shitty that they would be bringing in the gym, so we had to clean. And if there's one thing in the military, will teach us how to clean something. Anyway, so that night it's just blustery and cold and gross, and nobody's coming into the gym because nobody's leaving leaving the barracks. Nobody's coming here. Everybody's warm. Everybody is words of warm. And so we cleaned our butts off. Like we scrubbed the place down from stem to stern, or so I thought. But anyway, me and this guy named Doherty, he's like, I'm 6'3". This guy's like 6'4", and corn fed, big boy, right? So we go up to the second floor to walk through, and he gets out ahead of me. And so just being kind of silly, but also kind of testing a theory, I shut the lights off on him as he got like halfway through the second floor. I have never seen a dude that big move that fast and that gracefully, by the way, back to me toward the light. And he was like, dude, don't turn this light off. I said, why not, James? And he was like, because I always feel like I'm being watched up here. And I was like, okay. So the night goes on, and it's about 20 minutes to close. It's almost 20 minutes to 9 or 8, something like that. And it's nasty, dark. Nobody's coming in. So I go ahead and send my crew home. We all have to be there at 7 a.m. for this mandatory fun day. So I sent them off and locked the door behind them. Well, I'm walking through the gym one last time, making sure everything's the way it's supposed to be. And I'll kiss your bare ass if we didn't miss the biggest room in the house, the basketball court. There's dust all over this floor. I'm like, oh, son of a bitch. We had managed to pull the bleachers out, but we missed the biggest floor. Anyway, no big deal. I have nowhere to go. It's a Thursday night. I remember it's a Thursday night. Ain't shit going on. So I grab my broom and I'm sweeping. And I'm, as Joss Whedon referred to in Buffy, is having happy non thoughts. You know what I mean. You're not thinking of anything. Nothing positive, nothing negative. You are not having thoughts. And I'm just sweeping along, sweeping along. Well, at one point, it felt like somebody was standing directly behind me, like directly, like right at my back. And I thought that James had somehow gotten back in, and that fucker was messing with me. And with broom in my hand, I spun around, and nobody was there. Okay, not fun, but whatever. And I'm off doing my thing again. And like all of a sudden, I had these really, really bad thoughts, like really intrusive, really bad thoughts. Like if something were to happen to you, nobody would care. If you were to disappear, nobody ever come looking for you. Nobody loves you. Blah blah blah. Like these awful string of really, really bad thoughts. And being a preacher's kid, now I'm nervous. It's not cool, like what I'm feeling. Like that's not me, right? And so when I get nervous, I begin to sing Amazing Grace to myself, because I'm by myself and it's now a little spooky. And the amount of malevolence and the amount of anger and just rage, unlike anything I'd ever experienced before in my life, was suddenly directed at me. I was singing the wrong song. It would be like uh Biden showing up to a Trump rally. Bad. It was bad. It was real bad. And I closed my eyes because it hit me like a wave, and I closed my eyes for just a second. And in my third eye, in my mind's eye, the bleachers were full of people. And the balcony was full of people. And that glass wall up on that second floor looking over was full of people. And they were not happy with me at all. And I began to quote the 23rd Psalm. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. And my mind switched over to when Jesus asked the madman Gadara, who are you? And the demons answered back, Legion, for we are many. And I said, okay, you got the gym for the night. And I forcibly walked to the door back into the hallway. Because I knew if I would have started running, something was going to get me at that door. It wanted me afraid. I think it wanted me to hurt myself. And I was alone and vulnerable. I put my stuff away. I grabbed my car keys and I drove back to the barracks. I got in my barracks room. I got under the covers and I called my dad. Nothing like that has ever happened to me since then. Nothing like that ever happened before. But I really, honest to God, believe something. I honestly God believe I met a demon or demons. I think those words are the same. I think they're the same thing. That's the feeling they gave me anyway. But yeah, that's my ghost story. And I don't want to have another one. So thanks.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely.
Okay, this story is insane. This happened to my family when I was in high school. And it sounds like it's not even real, but I promise you it is. It involves demons, exorcism, deliverance, whatever you want to call it. So in high school, we had a housekeeper. For her privacy, we'll call her Joanna. So one day, Joanna comes up to my mom and she's really distraught. And she's like, I don't know what to do. Please, can you help me? And my mom's like, what's going on? And she knew that we were Christian and spiritual. And I guess she thought that maybe my mom would know something that'd be able to help her. So she was like, we've been having a lot of paranormal, ghost, demonic activity in our house. And my mom was like, what do you mean? What's going on? So she tells my mom that everything started going crazy when one of her neighbors or somebody that she knew gifted her youngest daughter a bicycle, like a tiny little tricycle that she could ride inside the apartment. And she had two daughters. So the youngest one got this tricycle and received this gift. They were really happy. And then weird things started happening. Like She said that in the middle of the night, they would hear like the bell of the tricycle ringing, and they would like hear it like going around the house by itself when the kids were not on it. The kids were asleep in their bed. And then she would start to get up like late at night and go look and see what the noises were. And the daughters would too. And they literally said that they would see the tricycle like going around the apartment at night, riding around with nobody riding it. Things started to get weirder. The youngest daughter, who was gifted the tricycle thing, she started seeing like a little boy, like a tiny little toddler boy, like a demon, running around their house at night and playing with the tricycle and playing with her toys. And it started to talk to her and befriend her. And it would tell her to go and hide weapon, like knives from the kitchen underneath her bed. It would tell her to harm herself, to harm her sister, and different things like that. So at this point, this is when Joanna comes to my mom, and she does not know what else to do. She's like, this is a spiritual problem. I don't know if I have ghosts in my house, if I have demons in my house. I don't know what is going on. And luckily she went to my mom, because all the women in my family, me, my mom, my grandma, great grandma, we're ministers, and we know how to clean houses, cast out demons, all of that stuff. And instead of going to like a psychic or a witch or something like that to go and help her. So my mom and my grandma meet with her, and they just start talking to her and explaining to her that these are demons in your house. They're not ghosts, because when we die, we go to heaven or hell, and our souls are not trapped here on earth in some in-between realm and unfinished business. That's all baloney. So they're like, you have demons in your house, and the good thing is that these can leave when you call on the name of Jesus. So we're going to come to your house. We're going to cleanse your house, pray over your house, cast the demons out. People call it different things, but they were like, that's what we're going to do. And she was like, great, come over. So my mom, my grandma, and their friend, I'm like, this is before I'm in ministry. I'm in high school. Now I'm a minister and I do this stuff all the time, but this was like 10 years ago. So my mom, my grandma, and their friend, they go to their house, they explain the gospel, believe in Jesus, get saved, and be filled with the Holy Spirit. And then like, okay, now that you have the power of God inside of you, the power of God in your home, let's kick these demons out, because sage and crystals and waving around like plants and those things do not get rid of demons. Those things invite demons. And so we were like, the only one who has the power to cast out these spirits and send them back to where they came from so they stop tormenting you is Jesus Christ. So they're like, okay, like let's go. So they start praying, they anoint the home with oil, commanding every demon, so basically what happened, if you guys are like, how did this even happen? A tricycle. So whoever gave that tricycle, that item was cursed, that object was cursed, or that person was like a witch or a warlock, and they attached a curse and demonic spirits onto that gift and gave it to them. So whatever gifts that you are receiving, be very careful. Don't like take gifts from strangers, or especially don't take any gifts or presents or whatever from people who are involved in witchcraft, the occult, tarot cards, astrology. I used to do some of those things, and it's all really, really evil and demonic. And my story's on my page if you want to go look at that. So yeah, anyways, to end the story, it's so crazy. So after they pray and they command all the demons to get out of their house, threw away the tricycle and everything like that, prayed over the daughter, commanded all demons to leave, then the little girl is like staring out the back patio, and she was just like kept looking out the window, and my mom was like, what do you see? And she was like, the little boy and like the spirit. She was like, they're outside the door like trying to come in. And my mom was like, are they able to come in? Are they coming in? And she was like, no, like they can't cross the door, like they're not allowed back in anymore. I don't know why. And they were like, because Jesus lives in your house now, the Holy Spirit is protecting you, and there is a barrier that they cannot cross because you're covered in the blood of Jesus, and he's your Lord and Savior now. And that part of the story always gives me chills. It's so beautiful. God protects us. So there are definitely things that you can do to protect your house and clean out your house. I get so sad when I see people saying, oh, we had to move out, we had to sell the house, we were tormented for years and years. It's like, call on the name of Jesus, anoint your house with oil, get saved, and command those things out of your house. They're the ones who are trespassing, not you. Anyways, if you thought this was interesting, if you want to hear more spiritual tips, spiritual stories, go ahead and hit that follow button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Be blessed. And I hope you know today that Jesus loves you. He died on the cross for you to have a new life. Be blessed.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, so I'm back with another one. So same house, it's my parents' house. We actually had just moved in. We hadn't been living there maybe for a month, if that. It was the winter time when we moved in. I was very young when we moved in this house, so I just remember it was winter time because we had the heat on and we had radiators. and the radiators were just so loud and obnoxious, and they were turned all the way up, so it was like ungodly hot in my room, right? So I went to sleep this night. Here comes my son to interrupt the story. So I went to sleep this night, and it was so hot, and the radiators were just loud and banging. And I remember I woke up in the middle of the night, and I had just looked at my arm because I sleep like this. And my arm, no lie, from here to here was slit open and bleeding. At least that's what I seen. So I start panicking. I jump up and I look, and my arm, there's nothing wrong with it. And I'm just sitting there like, what the hell just happened? I kept looking, I kept touching it, and there was nothing there. I know what I saw. I know what I felt. Like, I could feel it. It was warm. It felt like it was bleeding. It was a very surreal and crazy experience.
Completely unbelievable, but is entirely true.
Okay, I have to share one of the craziest experiences that I've ever had in my life. I have so many ghost stories, but this one is one of the craziest. So this happened when I was in middle school. I was probably about 13 or 14, and it happened with my two best friends at the time. Let's call them C and K. So this night in particular, we were all staying at C's house, and it was the middle of December, and her family, her mom and dad and her little brother, were off at a wedding an hour away from where we were. So, just like typical teenage girls, we loved watching horror movies together, so we decided this night we would watch The Ring for the first time together. When we watched movies at C's house, we would always watch them downstairs in the basement. That was just the hangout spot whenever we were over there. In this basement, when you would walk directly down the stairs, you would enter into the living room where we would watch movies. On the back wall, there was one couch. On the opposite wall of the staircase, there was another couch. In front was the TV, and directly to the left of the staircase was a storage room door. When we started watching the movie, I was sitting in an office chair directly in front of the storage room door. C was sitting on the couch directly on the back wall, and Kay was sitting on the couch across from the staircase. We get probably a quarter to a halfway through the movie when the storage room door behind me that was closed slowly creaks open, slams shut, and slowly creaks open again. All three of us screamed, and we all ran over to the couch where Kay was sitting. For some reason, it didn't cross any of our minds to even go and check into the storage room to see if anything was in there. So we all just curled up on that couch together and put a blanket over us and called it good. We continued watching the movie, and at one point, I distinctly remember all three of us sitting in a row, texting on our flip phones to who knows who. At that moment, while all three of us were mid-text, all of the power in the entire house, including all three of our cell phones, goes out and turns off. As we are sitting there bewildered and confused to what is going on, all of the power and our phones turn back on, and C's mom runs down the stairs asking if we're okay. We thought nothing of this and just told her, yeah, we're okay, we don't know what happened, and she went back upstairs. Don't ask me why, but for some reason we decided to finish the movie, and at this point it's probably 11 p.m., so it's time to take Kay home. At this age, we just walked everywhere we would go, so we were just going to walk Kay home this night, since she only lived about 10 blocks away from C's, and then I was going to spend the night with C. We all get our coats on and get our shoes on and walk upstairs to go let C's parents know that we're going to be walking Kay home. When we get upstairs, there is nobody in the house. It is dead silent. All three of us are so confused because her mom just ran down the stairs a few minutes ago asking us if we were okay. When we get outside, we see that it is a snowstorm outside and there's a fresh layer of snow on the ground. C's parents' truck was not home and there was no footprints in the snow whatsoever. They did not come home from the wedding yet. As weird as this was to us, we didn't think twice about it and continued walking Kay home. On our way to Kay's house, we were walking down the main street and there was a runner coming towards us. So all three of us split the way, let the runner go by, turned around. There was no nobody there. After we got Kay safely to our house, C and I booked it home. We booked it as fast as we could, ran inside, locked those doors, and tried our best to get a good night's sleep. Since that day, nobody can pay me enough to watch The Ring again or mess with anything to do with The Ring. After this experience, there is no way.
Story time on how I came to believe in spirits and the paranormal and all of that. When I was 9, my grandma passed away, my mom's mom. They were besties. I was really close with my grandma, and I'm besties with my mom, and it was just our thing. We'd all hang out together, and she would talk to my grandma probably, I don't know, 10 times a day. Like, they talked on the phone all the time, and if they weren't talking on the phone, we were actually all together. Needless to say, when she passed away, my mom took it really, really hard. I mean, you lose your forever best friend. So my mom was really bummed out, of course. Fast forward 2 weeks after the funeral and all of that. So everything kind of starts to settle and sink in, like she's really gone. So I'm in my parents' room, and me and my mom were about to watch a movie or something. So I think my dad was like folding clothes. Like, I know he was preoccupied with something else, and I was talking to my mom. So in my room, I had a Barbie dream house. Like, it was like a big mansion, and it had working phones and working like doorbells on the house, which I thought was so cool. But like the phones, you had to press down on this little pad for them to ring. And then when you pick up the receiver, it would stop ringing. But again, you had to either like press your doll down like super hard or press with your fingers down super hard. Like, otherwise it wouldn't ring. So while I'm in my mom's room, we both hear the phone ringing, my Barbie Dreamhouse phone. And so she said, you must have set something on it. Go like get it and then come back. So I went in my room. There was nothing on it, and it had stopped ringing. And I just kind of like said, okay, whatever. It's not ringing anymore. So I went back to my mom's room. No big deal. So fast forward like 2 minutes later, we hear it again. And it almost sounded like a little louder. So at this point, I'm like, that's weird. Like, come with me. I was 9. So yeah, I definitely wanted my mom to come with me at this. So we walk into my room, and again, there was nothing pressing down on the pad. And this time it continued to ring while we were in the room. So my mom, of course, she said, you know what? It's probably like a short, some kind of glitch. Like, it's happened before. Toys have done this, you know, like when they start to run down and they'll have that like weird sound and it'll just keep playing because the toy is like almost out of batteries or something like that. So that's what we assumed it was. So my mom said, no big deal. She was like, pick up the receiver and see if it stops ringing. So it did. So I picked up the receiver, put it back down. It stopped. We left. Fast forward maybe 5 minutes. It starts ringing again. So again, I'm super scared and like, Mom, like, come with me. Like, we need to go. So she has like a look on her face kind of at this point, like, what's going on? So we go back in my room and it's still ringing. So then it stops while we're in there. And when it stops, my mom says, take the batteries out. Like, I'm tired of hearing this phone. So I walk over and I pull the little thing off the back to take the batteries out. When I do that though, there were no batteries in the phone. Like, no batteries at all. I look at my mom for like some kind of explanation on why this is happening, like what's going on. Because of course, I'm 9. I couldn't make sense of it. I looked at my mom though, and her facial expression was just kind of like quizzical, like, I don't know what's going on either. So that wasn't exactly comforting. So maybe 20 seconds passed, like it wasn't a super long time, but me and my mom are still standing in my room trying to make sense of what just happened. So we're like kind of staring at each other, like basically saying like, what's going on with this toy? Like, this is crazy. And then all of our lights blew out. Every single one of them on like the ground floor, like where our bedrooms were in the living room and all that stuff. They all blew out at the same time. Like blew out. Like, and blew out. All of them. The room we were in, my parents' bedroom, the kitchen, and the living room. Like, how do we explain that? So at this point, my dad was just kind of like, oh, wow, there must have been some kind of short or some kind of issue. And he just goes to fix it because he's a guy and he's not thinking anything else. So my mom, she asked him, she said, did you hear Alana's phone ringing? And he said, yeah, I mean, did you guys fix that? You took the batteries out? So that let us know that we weren't hearing things. We really heard the phone ringing. And then we started to think, and my mom always talked to my grandma on the phone, and they couldn't do that anymore. And all of a sudden my phone's ringing in my dollhouse, and can't be explained how. So we both thought that that was maybe her way of communicating with us and letting us know that she was okay. So kind of comforting, but still kind of scary. And after that incident, nothing ever happened with the phone again. There was no ringing or unexplained anything. No lights blew out, nothing. It was just that one incident. And needless to say, I probably slept in my mom's room for probably a couple of weeks because I was not going back in that room.
Okay, tell me a story about something that you cannot explain.
Buckle up, y'all. It was my 13th birthday party. I was having a slumber party with some girls at my parents' house. We decided at some point in the night that we were going to play Bloody Mary. We decided to play it in my parents' room because they had the biggest mirror in the house and we could fit all of us in the mirror. Nothing happened. We moved on, watched some scary movies, ate pizza, whatever. But by the end of the night, since we had watched scary movies and played Bloody Mary, we were all freaked out, so we decided we would sleep in shifts. So real quick to understand, in my parents' house, if you're in the living room, you can see up the stairs and then you can see the entire upstairs hallway. My parents' bedroom is at the end of the hallway upstairs. So I was in the living room, it was my turn to stay awake, and I look upstairs and out of my parents' room, I see a tall, skinny woman in a white dress with long black hair floating out of my parents' room. She's not walking, she's floating out of their room and down the hallway. She's moving slow as fuck, coming down the hall, starts floating her ass down the stairs. I buried my head in a pillow and just blacked out. When I finally got the balls to take the pillow away and open my eyes, she was gone. That is not the point of this story. I mean, it's half of it, but fast forward 9 years. We are on a beach trip. It's our family, some family friends of ours, a bunch of people, and we're all by a campfire. Everyone's pretty drunk. They start telling ghost stories as us white people usually do. I was going to keep my little story to myself because my family doesn't believe in that stuff and they were going to think I was crazy. All of a sudden, my dad starts talking. This is his story. So he says, this was 9 years ago. He said it was the middle of the night. He woke up and there was a woman with long black hair in a white dress sitting at the foot of his bed. He thought it was my mom, so he said her name multiple times, then looked next to him. My mom was sleeping. Eventually, the woman just floated off the bed to a standing position and floated her ass out of the room. I had genuinely started to convince myself that I made the entire thing up when I was 13. Now, I had only told that story to 2 other people in the world, and they were both sitting at that campfire. One was my sister and one was my now husband. All of the blood drained from my face. They both are staring at me, jaws on the floor. Just knowing that I didn't make that up and that my dad does not believe in this stuff. So just knowing that my dad saw this thing too, weirdest feeling ever, weirdest thing ever. Ew.
Is entirely.
I actually have the craziest ghost story that directly affected me during college. So I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I went to a small Catholic college about an hour outside of the city in a rural area in the Allegheny Mountains, which are a subsection of the Appalachian Mountains. So this is my college. It's St. Vincent College in Latrobe, PA. And as you can see, we have a basilica, like a church, on campus. We also have a monastery with monks and priests. Some of them are even our professors. And it's a beautiful campus. I had a great 4 years, but I am convinced that this place is haunted, and it's honestly an open secret. Even the religious congregation and stuff, they don't deny it. So the faculty and staff and even alumni and students have ghost stories and urban legends that they tell about the school, and they're just kind of a fun part of the campus culture, but there is actually like a lot of spiritual energy on this campus, mainly because there's a large religious influence, but also our dorms are right against a decently sized cemetery. My sophomore dorm was actually right up against it. And so what happened to me lasted a little bit over a year. It actually went from my freshman year into my sophomore year. So now you have the background on my college campus. But what happened to me was just a bunch of consecutive events. It wasn't like one big thing. And there was, of course, like a peak where things got pretty intense. So my freshman dorm had these things called pods, where just big living spaces for the same gender. So you had about 10 rooms on the outside of the pod, and then you had a living area and bathrooms and showers in the center. So there were anywhere from like 15 to 20 girls living in one pod. In our pod in particular, I experienced a lot of weird things from the start. Showers turning on whenever you walk into the bathroom. There was always knocking late at night within the walls. And this isn't coming from another room. Like, they were cinder block walls. You cannot knock to the other rooms, and it would also jump from wall to wall. Our rooms had really heavy wooden doors, and I remember this because whenever you would close them, like, it would kind of click, so you knew the door was completely shut. And all the time my door would just like open up. Also my closet, we had like closets that opened like this, like you pull them open. I would be sitting in bed doing my homework or schoolwork, and the closet doors would just like crack open or like slowly open while I'm sitting there, and I'm watching it like with my own two eyes. So one night I decided to have my guy friends over, and I had like one guy friend in particular, but these were like his friends. So they came to see my room and everything, and they were sitting up against my bed or like my desk, and I had a picture framed above my desk, and it had like the glass cover on the front. And so we're just sitting there talking, and this is like mounted to the wall, like it's not coming off. This picture, like, I very much loved this picture and did not want it to fall off the wall. So we're sitting there, and there is a guy directly under the picture. It just like all of a sudden comes off the wall and breaks, and it wasn't even hanging there. It like was like boom, like off the wall. Everybody stopped what they were doing and were like, what the hell? But we were like, whatever, that can be explained. Then one night, me and my roommate are walking through the graveyard just to go on a walk, because that is our scenery. And I'm saying bye to my roommate. I'm like, I'm gonna go over to my guy friend's dorm so we can study for this chemistry test. So we're just sitting in his room studying. I'm kind of close to the door, and we hear like a single knock on the door, and we're like, oh, let's not answer it. What if it's a RA? Like, we don't want to get in trouble. There's alcohol in the room. So we ignore it. 15 minutes later or so, there's 2 louder knocks on the door, and we're like, okay, is someone playing a prank on us? So we wait a little bit, and then we open the door, no one's there. We're like, okay, someone's messing with us. Some more time passes, okay? And all of a sudden there's 3 loud knocks on the door, and I'm right by the door. I swing it open, and no one is there. Like, no one would have time to run away from the door. We would have heard them, we would have seen them. We're so creeped out, we get out of the room and we go to like the other rooms in his pod, and we like are like, hey, like, are you pranking us? These guys are like in bed. No one's up or hanging out in the living area. Everyone is like, no one's messing with you. What are you even talking about? We didn't hear any knocks.
Barely true.
Okay, so
True. I'll go first. When I was
Okay, my turn. So many years ago, my husband and I went on a vacation to Charleston, South Carolina, and we ended up renting an Airbnb on Folly Beach. And it was this adorable little cottage that was built in the early 1900s, and the couple who owned it had remodeled the place recently, and it was just adorable. I loved it from the time we got there. But I did have an eerie feeling the whole time we were there that we weren't alone and that we were being watched. There were hardwood floors throughout the house and all these beautiful rugs in each room. And I kept hearing noises during the night that sounded like someone walking on the rugs, kind of that soft thud sound. I would hear that most of the nights. Well, the first night we were there, I had a dream that a man was standing over me, and he looked like he was from the 1920s or so. He had on a black suit, a white shirt, and then had a bow tie around his neck. But the bow tie looked like a ribbon that was tied. He had this really cool mustache, dark hair that was parted down the middle and slit down on the sides. But he was standing over me, and he had uncovered me, and he was running his finger up the shin of my leg. And so it startled me. I woke up. It just so happened I was in the room alone. My husband had gotten up to go to the bathroom, and I was uncovered and in the exact position that I was in my dream when he was running his finger up my leg. So definitely unnerving, for sure. And I would just have the feeling when I was in the bathroom and getting ready and stuff that I was being watched the whole time. So several nights into our stay there, I gone to sleep, and shortly after, I was in that pre-dream type state where you're not quite fully awake, but you're not really asleep. Well, I heard an electronic sound come into the room. It was like a zipping type sound, zip, and it zips into the room pretty loudly. I open my eyes, and there is a figure that had zipped into the room over to my husband's side of the bed, and it was in the shape of a man with no features, and he was glowing blue, kind of like it would look if you were welding something. It had that appearance to it, but in the shape of a person. And this figure pushed the bed twice. He shook it twice, and I felt the bed move. I was wide awake at this point. And then immediately after that, there was a transformer on a pole outside of our house, and the blinds were open. All of a sudden, there was this huge explosion, and sparks go flying all over the road. The transformer exploded, and there was this huge surge of electrical energy that went throughout the entire house. Like everything was abuzz. All the electronics were going off. I was shaking my husband to wake him up, and it was just everything occurred back to back to back. It was really freaky. And at that point, I knew that there was definitely a ghost in this house. So needless to say, I barely got any sleep the other nights we were there. And on the final night, my husband had gone to bed early. I stayed up late. I'd been outside taking out the trash, doing dishes, getting ready to leave the next day. About 30 minutes after I shut the lights off and gone to bed, I started hearing all these popping sounds in the house, and they were getting louder and louder. And so, of course, my first instinct is thinking, oh my gosh, it's a ghost. So I'm trying to wake my husband up. I'm shaking him. I'm like, don't you hear it? Don't you hear it? And he finally hears it too. So he gets up, he grabs his gun. We go walking through the house, and the noises are coming from the back door. There was a deck all the way around the house by the back door. So we're walking in that area. I had left the back porch light on that night when I'd gone to bed, but suddenly it was completely black out there, and there was a figure standing in outside the doorway, and it was a guy who had a black hoodie up over his head, and he had a crowbar, and he was trying to pop open the back door. So my husband raised the gun and yelled at him, and all of a sudden there's tons of shuffling going on all over the deck. So there were multiple people out there. I'm not sure how many, but my husband took off after him and chased him. He couldn't catch them, but when he got back, he realized that they had unscrewed the light bulb on the back porch and set it on the table. So our presumption, and the cops had presumption too, was that they knew somebody was in the house, and who knows what their intentions were. They were trying to break in. So anyway, my thoughts about all of this is that the ghost, I think, was there to help us and to warn us that we weren't safe while we were there. And so if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have gotten the sleepless nights, and who knows, I may not have heard them that final night, and we don't know what their intentions were if they would have gotten into the house.
Sounds completely unbelievable, but is entirely true.
I've got a bunch of these, but I usually don't talk about them often because people think I'm crazy, so I just don't really talk about them. But the earliest memory that I have of weird things happening to me was when I was in first grade. One of my best friends, she was born very ill. I don't know exactly what she had, but she was very, very small. She was in a wheelchair. She couldn't walk on her own. She had an oxygen tank. By the time she was in first grade, I think she'd had 6 or 7 surgeries already. So she was quite ill. But she was one of my best friends. We read together all the time. We both would bring books out to the playground and we would sit and read, or whatever game we were playing, we would play over by the side so that she could, be as involved as she could be. Like, she was great. I loved her. We were really good friends. Unfortunately, we didn't ever really hang out outside of school because she was quite ill. So I didn't really hang out with her. Like, she didn't come over to play or anything like that. But at school, we were always sitting together in school, at lunch, on the playground, all that stuff. And then at some point during the school year, she had another surgery coming up. And it was supposed to be a routine surgery. It was something that she had had before. Again, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was a surgery. And her mother had come in and kind of explained a little bit to us what was going to happen. She was going to be out for a few weeks. So the class had, written little, like, get well cards and, like, all these little gifts and trinkets and that kind of thing. And then a couple days later, or a week later, something like that, it was a weekend, and I remember being like, man, I really miss my friend. And I remember waking up in the morning and going downstairs, getting something to eat or whatever kids do in the morning. And when I'd gone back upstairs to my bedroom, my friend was chilling in my room and she was like playing and stuff. And she didn't have a wheelchair and she didn't have an oxygen tank. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, your surgery worked, you're better. And she was like, yeah, I'm really good now. Everything's great. I just wanted to play for a little while. So, and it was weird because, like, I mean, in my first grade little, 5, 6-year-old brain, I don't remember thinking anything other than, like, this is fantastic. And, obviously looking back now, I'm like, I shared a room with my sister, my little sister, and she was nowhere to be seen. I have no idea where my sister was, whatever. But we played all afternoon. I remember the games that we played. Like, she really wanted to play Pretty Pretty Princess, so we did that, which, if you remember that game, it was, like, the coolest game ever. So we played that. We played with, like, my little kitchenette set, like, all of the things that she didn't really ever get to do in class with us because she couldn't, we, like, played all afternoon. And then the only other thing that I remember being a little bit weird about that, even at the time, was she kind of just got up and was like, okay, well, it's time for me to go. And I was like, I don't remember the phone ringing. Like, my mom didn't come up and check on us at all, first of all. But also she didn't, like, come and say, hey, it's time to go. Like, your mom's here. And my friend was just like, yeah, no, I know, but I have to go now. Like, it's time for me to go. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, hey, we'll see you at school. Like, you can come and do all these things on the playground with us now. Like, I'm super excited to see you. And she just kind of, like, smiled and waved and walked out my bedroom door. It wasn't like she vanished or I woke up in my bed. Like, she just waved and walked out the door. And then I went about the rest of my day, and it was what it was. So then a few days after that, my mom had gotten a phone call around
God. Oh.
So I'm here to tell you all the juicy stuff that happened to me as a child in Haiti, all the haunted stories, all the ghosts that I've seen, all the crazy voodoo stuff that happened to me. But this particular one is actually when I was a very, very young Jenny. I'm Jenny. I was very, very young, and I had this friend. He had special needs, but I didn't know the difference when I was younger. I just knew he was a funny kid. That was my friend, and I was his friend, and all of that. But he passed away at a very young age. Notice the pattern, like all of my friends, all of my childhood friends that I grew up with, majority of them actually passed away at a very young age. So I'm actually glad to be alive, and I'm lucky to be alive because I grew up seeing a lot of things, a lot of stuff as a child in Haiti. So this particular child had special needs. We went to the same school. We lived, literally his house was behind my godmom's house. So in the same neighborhood, like I can literally walk to his house within like a minute, right? So we would go to the river together, just walk to the river. We will swim all day long and then go back home literally like towards afternoon time. That was like the thing that we do during summertime. And then one day he just fell ill and he passed away. But as a child, I didn't know the difference between when somebody died and when I just didn't know the difference. I just know, okay, well, that person is no longer here and I don't see them anymore, but him particularly, every single time I would go play in the same spot that we would play together, I will see him. Like I would see him, but towards like the woods, the wooded areas, but that's where we usually play. And he would stay. He would never come too close to me, and I never understood why he would never come too close to me. I just knew that I hadn't seen him, and I just assumed that, okay, well, I hadn't seen him. Maybe he went to go live with his other long distance relatives on a different town, the next town over or whatever. But I keep seeing him, and there's this facial expression that he always makes because he had special needs. He would make this thing where he would stick his tongue out, but to me, we were just playing and he would do that with me. So I would play in the same spots where we usually play. My friend's not here, but I was a loner, so I like to play by myself all the time. And I would play with him, and he would not play with him after he passed away, but while he was alive. And then when I saw him a couple of times, I keep seeing him in the woods, he would like crawl on his feet and try to like, when you see a child like crawling on their feet and their hands and trying to like come to you, like running almost, he would do that, and then he'll stop halfway and then he'll stick his tongue out like he used to do to me when he was alive. Like we would do it back to each other, and I kept doing it back to him. Like it was just like a normal thing. And then one day I went to the river where we would go and play. I saw him in the river, like he was just there, just hanging around. I waved at him, he waved back at me, and he never actually called me to come to him, and I never actually went to go walk towards him. I just assumed that they probably told him not to play with me anymore, so he would play with me at a distance. So I would always keep my distance. We would just do whatever. He will stick his tongue at me, I'll stick my tongue back at him, and he will just wave by the river, and that's it. I never actually asked what happened to him. It just kind of one day I just didn't see him again. That's after he had passed away. He would come and visit me by the woods, wherever we usually play, and then by the river, and then just one day out of nowhere I just never saw him again. I just never saw him. Almost like his spirit was released and he just never came by again. And that's it. Yeah. So if you guys want to hear about the time that I saw a mermaid in Haiti, let me know and I'll tell you that story. That story was kind of a little bit like weird to me because I actually saw her and then she like disappeared. But tell me if you guys want to hear that story. I have plenty of other stories about when I grew up in Haiti, because for some reason I'll always see things, and my godmom used to always tell me that I was a seer. I never knew what a seer was, but I can see things. I don't see them anymore, but I used to see a lot of random stuff, and I would wonder why I'm the only one that could see those kind of things. But yeah, bye.